Coming up next on this special Art Beat edition of Arizona Horizon, see Arizona's past come to life through historic stereographic photos. We'll see how older technology is being used to create contemporary art, and we'll meet renowned conductor Tito Munoz, the new music director of the Phoenix Symphony. Those stories next on this special edition of Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this special Art Beat edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. We begin with a look at Arizona history as captured by unusual photographs. Jeremy Rowe is a photographer who collects stereographic images of Arizona. The result is history from a unique visual perspective. It's good to see you again. We got a lot of pictures to get to, but before we get going here, stereographs. You've got like a historic model of, what are we talking about here?
They're cards that have two images on it. It was made with a camera, which I'll show you in a few moments, that has two images, one left eye and one right eye image.
Yes.
And by keeping the images separated and viewing them, so your left eye sees the left image, right eye sees the right image, your brain puts it together and gives a 3D image. It was the first real popular media in the 19th century, in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it gives you a really immersive 3D view of reality. It's just amazing to think of people that had never seen anything but pictures on the wall, paintings, and so on, to all of a sudden have an immersive 3D photographic environment.
Well, I remember as a kid we had those little things where Viewmasters, yeah, same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was the commercial version. This is the earlier 19th century version. You can see there are two pictures, a left and right picture. There are two lenses, left and right picture. You hold them up, focus, and you see the image in 3D.
And that's what people were, let me get a hold of this thing. Yeah. That's what people were doing, huh? I mean, there was basically...
You'd have a stereoscope in the parlor, you'd have a little stack of stereo views. If you traveled, you'd send views back to your family would have stereo views that they'd exchange with friends. People would come over and sit around the fireplace or the kerosene lamp and look at views, even in places like Arizona, out in the Tules here.
Yeah,
you find stereo views. So.
Well, let's talk about Arizona now. Let's start with your book now. You've got a new book of a collection of these things, correct?
Yes, it's sort of the history of stereo in Arizona and the history of Arizona from a stereo perspective. So it's sort of a blend of the two. It's 260 images, about 307 pages, with the story of how stereo was formed, different people that made stereo photographs, the photographers, sort of biographies of them, and then a checklist of views, so showing where they were taken, how they were made, what they documented, and using that as a resource for looking at history a little bit differently.
And I think we have a cover shot of the book. There were a couple of guys, I think, on the cover of that. Who are these fellows over there on the left?
One is Powell, who was the explorer that explored the Grand Canyon in the 1870s, and I don't have the name of the other person, unfortunately. The image in the lower corner is Eaton and Bailey's Mercantile, which is a dry goods store in Globe, one of the earliest images of Globe extant. And stereos are interesting because they're the first images that were made of Arizona in any mass or number. And they tended to be very small cameras, very easy to carry cameras, and so they made a lot of images in places that weren't normally documented.
Yeah.
And many of the images you see in Arizona history books come from stereo, but nobody knows that. So
interesting.
They've been taken from one side and printed as opposed to seeing the stereo. So understanding how they were made, where they were made, and why gives you more perspective to understand the content of the image.
And I think our next photo kind of shows the stereographic camera, at least the historic one.
That's from about the 1880s.
Yeah.
The camera has the two lenses, as you see. They focus separately and they actually expose separately, and they would, a good photographer would actually overexpose one side, underexpose the other slightly, because your brain would take the detail from one and detail from the other and put them together and make a broader tonal range for the photograph. So as a way to make the limited tonal range of the photos extended by using that technique. And the camera's, that's about a 5x7 negative size. The thing in the foreground with the two circles is actually a shutter that slips over the lenses and has a flap that you flip up and down to make the exposure.
My goodness.
And then the piece in the back is a plate holder. You'd have a glass plate that you'd make the images on, and you'd have to make an original negative for each image. You'd have to take a glass plate, pour collodion, which is a thick viscous material, pour that on, flow it, sensitize the plate, put it in the back of the camera while it was wet, expose it, process it, dry it, pack it before you could go back. And each negative had to have its own glass plates. You had to carry all the material with you into the field.
And I want to ask about, because our next photograph shows, I think from the Powell expedition, yes. And we see the guy out there, and he's got a lot of stuff. That must have been quite the burden to be carrying around.
It was at least 150 pounds, maybe 175 pounds for 12 images, even if you're doing very small number of images. You could scrape the emulsion off and reuse the glass plate, but also if you drop the glass plate, that image was gone. So there are stories of photographers who worked in the field and had a burro stumble or a horse drop a box, and they lost their entire output from a period of time. But there's a little dark tent in the back. They called the process wet plate because you had to process before the collodion dried. And in places like the East Coast, where it was fairly humid, it was a fairly long exposure time and a long time to be able to do the processing. In Arizona, where it was dry and hot, the collodion dried very quickly. And once it dries, the negative is not usable. So you had to carry water with you. You had to process very quickly. You were in a little dark tent in the sun, baking as you're trying to do this, and you're working with gun cotton and ether, so you had ether vapors coming in. So it was a very rigorous process.
It was like a psychedelic experience. I think the earliest photo now that you've shown us is this next one of these are Papago warriors, correct?
Right. Yeah, they were taken from the southern part of the state up to the northeastern part of the state to deal with the Navajo. The Anglo population used the tribes against each other, some of the tribal factions, to moderate the area. So the Navajo in the north were moved to Bosque Redondo, and they used Papago warriors to help package and move the Navajo from northeastern Arizona into New Mexico.
And you're talking 1865 circa.
Right. This is just after the Civil War cleared. During the Civil War, a lot of the military was pulled out of Arizona, so it was very dangerous, and not a lot of people were here. As the war wore down, soldiers came back in, the Apaches are sort of put back, and people came back. This is one of the mining communities in southern Arizona that the explorers came back to.
Arivaca. A next photograph is of an Apache agent. This is on the San Carlos Reservation. The photographer is Dudley Flanders.
Dudley P. Flanders.
Excuse me.
He was one of the first people to come to Arizona to actually make images to sell. This was 1874. He was a photographer from Los Angeles, and he made an expedition, came across through Kingman, Camp Beale Springs, down to Prescott, across into the Verde Valley, down through Maricopa Wells, because there was nothing in Phoenix at that point. Maricopa Wells was the biggest stop on the route to Tucson, and then photographed in San Carlos.
And you mentioned Tucson. Our next photograph is of Congress Street. If you're familiar with Congress Street, we are looking west here, and oh, does that look different?
Yep. Very typical western town, false front buildings. It's kind of hard to see in this, but there's a mortar and pestle in the back for the pharmacy. One of two studios in the territory during this time was in Tucson. One was in Prescott, one was in Tucson. And that was sort of the nexus for where people would make photographs and produce the photographs during that time.
Look at that. The next photograph is interesting as well because it's in Yuma. It's a steam barge, and these things actually went inland in Arizona, correct?
They went up the Colorado and down the Gila and carried a lot of the mining equipment during that time period before the railway was in place. This is sort of an interesting image because in the background you can just barely see it, but that's the railway bridge that was just completed in the back, and that sort of drove the stake through the heart of the poor paddle wheel steamers.
So the future and the past right there in one shot. Vulture Mine in Wickenburg circa 1881 or so, and Vulture City was larger than Phoenix when this photograph was taken.
Right, early 1880s. This is a very rich mine south of Wickenburg, and you can see also this has some of the residue from being hot. You can see the modeling in the sky. That's the collodion having a problem with the heat here. So this is shot during the time where it was so hot that it was difficult, and you see a difference in exposure between the two sides of the image as well.
Okay, next shot is of downtown Phoenix, the corner of Washington and Montezuma Street.
It's about 4th Avenue, roughly.
I was going to say, where is Montezuma Street? 4th Avenue, huh?
Yeah.
And that's Washington. Look at that.
That's Washington. That's the northeast corner, I believe. The business was only there for about 2 years. And again, these photographs are really great documents because they're businesses that came and went. There are things that transitioned and changed, were only there for a short period of time. We'll find a photograph is the only record that really shows what's going on. You can see in detail on the viewer, you can see the name of the business on the side, go back to City Directory, find the years of operation, and nail down when this was taken.
Oh, that's fantastic. We have some Apache artifacts from the Globe area. It was interesting to read what you wrote about this in the sense of this American Indian stuff, very big back east, these artifacts and things.
This is actually a collection that they used the stereo view to try and sell the collection to a collector in Massachusetts. So they brought all the material in, photographed it in Globe, Arizona, and then sent the card to Massachusetts.
Yeah,
and see, it's all Apache material.
That's the real deal there, huh? Speaking of the real deal, if you're up on Tempe Butte and you're looking toward Phoenix these days, it looks a lot different than this.
A bit different than this, yes. This is about 1885, looking towards Phoenix. The new railway bridge is in place there. This is where Hayden's Ferry was when they would cross the Salt River using the ferry boat. And Hayden's Mill is in the corner just below, and then Montes La Casa Vieja, the buildings that have turned into that. So there's a few things that are still there.
Isn't that, that's Montes over there, huh? And that's the Hayden Flour Mill right there to the right.
Just below.
And somewhere in the distance in the future would be Phoenix.
Yep.
Not so much right there, but in the future. That is fantastic. Speaking of towns, Tombstone, I think we got a shot of a parade in Tombstone. And this tough town was already kind of turning into a tourist town by the early 1900s.
Yeah, the floods had taken the mines out. The silver mines are very wealthy for a period of time, but the water was flowing in the mines. It was very difficult for them to continue. So they were transitioning from being a mining community to something else. And tourism was one of the areas that they sort of pulled together. This is the Modoc stage, the stagecoach that was sort of a famous historic stagecoach, and they used it for parades, for a variety of reunions and other sorts of things to help gear up that tourism and tourist activity there.
I want to end on just a fantastic shot here of the Grand Canyon. And this is, first of all, it's hand-colored, correct?
Yes.
And look at what he's doing. I mean, where's the safety precaution here?
Pre-OSHA,
yes.
All the safety factors at the canyon, but they would hand color these with oils or watercolors on occasion. The coloring is beautiful in the viewer.
It is.
But yeah, trying to do something dynamic. It's interesting. This is sort of a later view. The earliest images that were seen by many people in Arizona were the Grand Canyon survey, the Wheeler and Powell surveys, and then you go sort of full circle to the 1920s and 30s, and the canyon was still a very popular subject, and you see a different style of things, sort of drugstore cowboys, posed on the edge.
And when you say hand-colored, that is both sides, hand-colored.
And if there's a difference between the colors, you get a little bit of a flickering in the viewer. They take advantage of that sometimes.
As far as these old photos, how many more of these things are out there?
It's really hard to say. When I first started working on the book, they thought there were 200 or 300 Arizona stereos total. I've got about 4,000 titles that I've pulled together so far. So there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 10, 11,000 views out there, just as a rough guess. Millions and millions of views are made, but Arizona was sort of a difficult place to photograph and not heavily photographed during this era.
And we've got about a minute left here. I got to ask you, this sounds like a labor of love. Why do you do this?
I found a couple of photographs at Park and Swap many years ago, and that sort of set the hook, and trying to find out more about the photos, how they were taken, how they were made, what they mean. Everyone's got a story in it, and as you start spending time with them, you start pulling more and more of the story out of the photographs, and it's a lot of fun.
Jeremy, it's always a pleasure. Great stuff.
Thank you very much.
We now focus on a centuries-old art form that's being revived in the heart of Phoenix. Producer Shauna Fisher introduces us to the unique art of letterpress.
In an up-and-coming area of downtown Phoenix, Nancy Hill has set up shop.
My business partner and I decided that we would get a small letterpress machine, a tabletop letterpress machine, because we both liked typography, we liked paper, and we thought it sounded like fun. So I started looking on Craigslist, and instead I found a whole letterpress shop for sale, which just made so much sense since neither one of us had any experience. So we bought it.
That dry wit serves Nancy well as she revives an old-fashioned art form in a decidedly high-tech world. Nancy has 3 presses that she uses, but her workhorse is a Chandler & Price made in 1922. Letterpress is a type of printing that uses wooden type and rollers to print one page at a time.
You assemble the type that you want in the format that you want, and you lock it up in a chase, which is a metal frame. You get it all locked up using wood and metal to make sure it's all tight. You drop it in the press. You ink up the press. The rollers pick up the ink from your disc or your cylinder. They roll over the image, whether it's words or an actual image, and it comes together. It's a platen press. It comes together, and it prints it on paper.
The end result is a raised imprint on the paper. Nancy only uses cotton rag paper as it's eco-friendly and easy to find. But finding the type and the images she uses can be difficult.
Well, I look for vintage images and wood type everywhere I can. There's not a lot of that in Arizona. We're kind of too new a state to have an old established letterpress community.
Nancy's creations range from intricate wedding invitations to simple stationery. Longtime customer and friend Jill Bernstein says the lure of letterpress is a sentimental one.
It reminds me of when I was very young. We lived outside Chicago when I was very young. We used to take the train into town to go shopping, and the big treat at the end of the day was I got to go to the Crocs and Brentanos, which was this huge bookstore. And I would go in, I'd get to buy a book, and I'd pick up the books, and the first thing I would do would be to smell them. And I loved the feel of the paper and the smell of the ink. And with letterpress, it's that on steroids, because you can also feel the hand and know that somebody, you know. To me, printing's always been kind of magical, and there's just something, you know, it's like alchemy. They do this thing and then this image shows up and it's beautiful.
The letterpress was first invented by Johann Gutenberg in the 15th century. It's how everything was printed, newspapers, books, until the mid-20th century when offset printing took its place. Now printed materials look polished. But for Nancy, it's the imperfections of letterpress that make it so beautiful.
And even when I have workshops, I have to tell people that it's not going to be perfect every time. There's going to be changes in registration. Two colors don't meet at the right spot. Changes in impression. First there's a big impression, then there's no impression. You know, and color doesn't come out the same sometimes. So there's a lot of that. And that's what makes it nice. It's handmade. It's one at a time.
We wrap up this Art Beat special by getting to know Tito Munoz, one of the most talented conductors of his generation. Tito Munoz was recently named music director of the Phoenix Symphony. I talked to Munoz about his new role. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Any previous experience in Arizona, Phoenix, Southwest?
The two times that I visited to conduct the orchestra for my basically my audition, yes.
So basically, this is still kind of new to you.
It's just very much new to me. Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah, it's hot.
Yes, it is.
It's very hot here.
All right, I want to ask a bunch of basic questions just because I can.
Sure.
You are the new music director of the Phoenix. What does a music director do?
That's a good question. Aside from what a conductor normally does, which is come into a situation with a new orchestra and guide the musicians through a program of music. You know, we give the concerts, we try to achieve a high level, we try to maybe build on something that we might have worked on before. But essentially with a music director, because it will be a situation where I'm going to see the orchestra much more frequently, so you know, all throughout the year, then my goals will not just be the concert, they'll be far-reaching goals. They'll be, you know, trying to build on artistic, you know, accomplishments that we've had, you know, and further reaching. And aside from that, it's also just helping the orchestra as an organization achieve more of an audience throughout the community and be part of the community and get more people excited about classical music.
Can orchestral music, it is so steeped in tradition, and every time a new CD comes out, you know, for most of it just kind of sounds like the last CD of that particular piece.
Right.
But can orchestral music be advanced, and if so, how?
Well, I think that it's not a question of the music itself, I think it's just the way it's presented. I think just like a museum needs to always kind of think of new ways of presenting what they already do. I mean, we all know that Van Gogh is a great painter, and we somehow want to try to find a way to connect and see a painting by Van Gogh, just as Beethoven's a great composer. And I think it's just a way of kind of giving the audience a relatable experience in a way that gives them more of an opportunity to see what those things are. So I don't think it's the music. I really think it's just the way we present it that needs to be updated.
Interesting. Okay, now, as a conductor, because most of us in the audience, there's one person moving, it seems like more than all the others, and it's you, it's the conductor.
Yes.
When the performance is being done, what does a conductor actually do?
Okay, that's a very good question, and the way I like to explain it is it's very similar to what a director of a play, of a movie would be doing, which is, of course, they have their people, their actors, their people interpreting a script, and a director would have to have that script in front of them and know exactly what they want to get out of it. A conductor is the same thing. We have a score, we have our music, we want to get something out of it, and we have our talented musicians that do it, that actually do it. But because our rehearsal time is very short, and because we've been trained to kind of be able to follow gestures, we do some of our directing actually in real time at the concert. So what you're seeing is a conductor trying to convey to the musicians what to do and how to do it. I mean, of course they can read, but there's a certain kind of element of spontaneity and in interpretation that needs to be conveyed to them.
So if I'm in the audience and I elbow the guy next to me and I go, "That's a great conductor," why am I saying that's a great? What am I looking for?
Well, you're actually you're hearing. I think it's something that, you know, when you hear something visceral and you hear something that really connects with you, and you hear the musicians connecting with you. I mean, really, that's the most important thing, is that the musicians themselves are connecting with the audience. I mean, you see my back. So,
right.
You know, my job is not the audience, my job is the musicians. My job is trying to get them to play as best as they can so that they connect with you.
So in the same way that a certain director might be known for action pictures, another for dramas, and another for comedy, there are conductors that, I mean, all you got to kind of do is make a little movement and the whole thing jumps, or they're very demonstrative. It's basically similar to that?
It's very similar. I mean, there are conductors, you know, Leonard Bernstein, for example, was known as a very demonstrative conductor. I mean, jumped around and everything. But one of his teachers, one of the teachers that he used to have was Fritz Reiner, who was the famous conductor of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for many years. And Fritz Reiner was known to have the smallest gesture possible. I mean,
yeah.
Really just tiny, tiny, tiny. And Bernstein would talk about this, that it was incredible that he could have the smallest gesture, and then the moment he raised his hand, the sound that poured out of the orchestra, because it's all relative, of course. Yet Bernstein was the complete opposite. Bernstein couldn't help but be so evocative and so emotive with his gestures. And so, you know, yeah, I think everyone finds their own way.
And the audience sits back and they sense that. They can feel that.
Absolutely.
Now, can a great conductor lead an average orchestra? And can an average kind of pedestrian conductor lead a great orchestra? You know what I'm trying to say here? I mean,
yes.
Can that dynamic happen? Because I would think one would pull up the other.
Well, it's true, and I think the learning curve of an orchestra. You know, if we take your example of a great conductor leading a not so great orchestra, then most likely the learning curve of that orchestra is going to be huge, because they will find, because an experienced conductor will know how to get the best out of them. That's really the mark of a great conductor, somebody who can really get the best out of whoever they have in front of them. And a mediocre conductor might not do that with a great orchestra, but you might not know the difference, because a great orchestra can play themselves too sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you know, sometimes you go to a great orchestra concert and it'll sound very good, but the impact that the person at front is making may not be that big.
That's when the guy next to you elbows you and says, you know, they could do a lot better than us if we had a better conductor.
That's right.
Hey, what got you into music? Obviously, you started very young. Was there a moment when you were a kid, like an aha moment that propelled you and you realized, this is what I'm going to do with my life?
I think that I had many of them, actually. I was very lucky living in New York City. And I didn't realize this until, of course, I left, but I was afforded so many wonderful opportunities. I was going to the Fame High School, though. If you've seen the movie Fame, that's
yes.
the high school I went to, Performing Arts High School, which is now in Lincoln Center. I was going to Juilliard on Saturdays, LaGuardia High School during the week. I was playing with the New York Youth Symphony on Sundays, and everything took place basically on the campus of Lincoln Center. And so I was spending all my week, even though I lived in Queens, I would commute every day, and I was spending all my time in Lincoln Center among the New York Philharmonic, among the Metropolitan Opera, going to Carnegie Hall,
yeah.
student tickets, you know. And so my life was music. And so I certainly had little milestones throughout that time, but I couldn't have imagined anything else.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like a kid who gets into sports. They play the sport so much and they wind up being good at the sport because they're there all the time.
Because they're there all the time.
But you have to have a talent for it. And were there people telling you, you know, you can go places?
I think I had a good mix of different things. I mean, I was a violinist at first, and I knew I was going to go as far as a certain point on the violin. I mean, I played professionally. And then conducting, of course, usually happens later.
Yes.
That's usually something, like any leader, you know, usually leadership roles happen later in life. But you know, I had really good opportunities, and I had a passion for it early on, and I started to find opportunities for myself to do it. But it wasn't until I went to the Aspen Music Festival. The Aspen Music Festival in Aspen, Colorado is actually a very well-known classical music festival with a very prestigious conducting program. And I happened to get accepted into it at an early age for conductor. I was 20. But that was sort of a little bit of a rite of passage to a career in conducting, because everybody who goes there has some experience, has some career, and I didn't at that that point. I was just a kid, undergrad. I didn't know anything. And so that was intimidating, but at the same time gave me confidence by the end of the summer that maybe this was something I could do.
Yeah, that's when you know that stars were starting to align a little bit there.
Right.
Hey, before we go, usually when we have classical folks in here, I always ask, is there a piece of, let's say someone's listening right now, they go, I just don't get classical. I'm trying, I just don't get it. Is there a piece of music that you think people should listen to as a good entree into classical music?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I love Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. For me, I think that every time I hear a great performance of that, I can't imagine anybody not be gripped, and because it has everything. It has drama, it has the soft side of classical music, the second movement, which is such a beautiful melody. It has everything, and for me, that's always the first. It's such a cliche thing because it's the famous four notes that everybody knows.
Sure.
But I think, you know, if you really hear a great performance live, it's something that can grip you. I think so.
And very quickly, last question: your favorite piece of music to conduct?
Whatever it is that week. So come and hear Carmina Burana, which is what I'm going to be conducting that week.
All right. Well, you're doing a great job already promoting.
You.
It's great to meet you. Good to have you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us on this special Art Beat edition of Arizona Horizon. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.